Everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Kedma Ough here, who is the author of this lovely book, Target Funding, a proven system to get the money and resources you need to start or grow your own business. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit. Last year I worked with a group here in the Northwest that
Mhm.
works with primarily women, LGBT, um, and uh, and veteran groups.
Nice.
And yeah, and a lot of them were small business owners
Yeah.
who are very, very interested in the topic at hand. So tell us a little bit about your background and like the business that you started and how you even started thinking about creating this book.
Actually, how I created that book had nothing to do with business, although I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur. So I've been in
Okay.
business for a long time. It actually started through a personal crisis. I had unfortunately had to leave a relationship. And in 2001, I was faced with a dilemma of how do I manage the finances that resulted from that relationship. And so my attorney said that the only way I could make it out of this scenario is to file bankruptcy.
Mm,
And I remember that moment as clear as today. I was sitting on a corner. Literally, it was raining. It was Tucson, Arizona, and I was sobbing my eyes out because I had just filed bankruptcy. And I could see the bankruptcy court there. And I thought to myself, this is it, it's over.
oh,
Right? Because when you think about how everything is tied to our quote unquote worth, so much of it is tied to our credit. And
mm,
so it was very difficult for me to figure out what to do next.
mm,
As a single person, I didn't have any family surrounding me. And I
mm,
remember picking up my stuff, going back to my apartment. And 2 weeks later, I received a credit card from Capital One for $200,
mhm,
which may not be a big deal for you. But for me, I remembered as a little girl, I would play a game called Monopoly. And when I'd go around the board and I'd pass go, I'd get $200. So I said to myself, oh my goodness, the universe just, played my hand and I just got $200 to play the game. And so I literally went on this adventure for 15 years to discover and uncover every funding and resource available to people in my position. And that is how I developed target funding. I essentially reverse engineered how funding looked. And I said, okay, what if I look at funding as if you were bankrupt?
mhm.
And then I was challenged to get you money.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm gonna, your headphones keep on clicking, so I
Oh, okay. I'm
hear, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no problem. I just wanted to, so, let me do a little time check too, so I can actually cut this piece out, 4:39.
Yeah. Do you need me
Um,
to repeat it?
no, I just want to give you a heads up that you keep on, your headphones keep on clicking and it goes click, click, click,
Okay.
and the
I'll be
sound.
super careful. Or I could do
It's okay.
without it, but
No,
okay.
no, it's good. It's good. Actually, it's perfect. I just wanted to give you a heads up so you knew that it
Thank
was
you.
happening, so you wouldn't keep on hitting your sound. Okay. Um, all right. So tell me, give us a little bit of background. So did you have a business? I know that you had some personal circumstances that
Mhm.
forced you to go bankrupt. What was the business that you had? I know you said you
I've
have
had,
fifth
yeah,
gen.
I've had a few. So one of my favorite and first businesses actually happened when I got laid off. So it's always ironic, right?
Right.
It's always like when trauma hits. I was living in Arizona and I was really inspired by bed and breakfasts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've been to a bed and breakfast, but
Mm-hmm.
I love the feeling. It feels like home. And at the time, I was a little envious because where I was living, you have Maryville, you have Los Montana, you have Canyon Ranch, all the famous spa
High-end
resorts.
resorts. Yeah.
Yeah, that all the famous people like Oprah go to. And I thought, gosh, what would it feel like if I could go to a bed and breakfast that had those amenities?
Mm-hmm.
So, naive Kedma decides to put a business plan together. And I worked so hard and so diligently, and I put everything in there, and I did the research, and I walked into my bank, and I asked for about $300,000,
Mm-hmm.
and I swear the lender almost spit out whatever he was drinking
Yeah.
because he's like, well, have you been in business before? And I'm like, no, but I've done this research. Well, do you have a job right now? No, I just told you I got laid off. Well, do you have collateral? I'm like, well, I have this really old car I drive. And so he's like, let me give you some really sound advice. Don't go into business, go get a job.
Wow.
And I was so angry. How dare he ruin my dream? He stomped on it and he threw it out in the garbage. And I said, I'm going to show him. And I went back to my apartment and I said, okay, how am I going to do this? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I don't need to have the resort. And literally within 6 weeks, I had built a business where I contracted with the top bed and breakfasts. And I
Mm.
said, I'll come in. We will design a whole spa service program with registered, licensed professionals for your clients in exchange for using your facility. And you'll get 20 to 25% off every service.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in business. I had the resorts. The resorts gave me my clientele. And that's how I began my first company.
Wow. Okay. And this is before you actually went bankrupt because of your personal
Yes.
circumstances. Okay, got
Yes.
it. And then you said you have four other businesses. What were your other
Well, I've had
businesses?
others, yeah. So my one that I've had now since 2001 is really related to specific consulting, but only for people with disabilities.
Mm.
So I fell in love with supporting people with disabilities back in 2001, and that was before I gave birth to my son who's autistic. And people would say,
Mm.
why do you care about that population? People will always be honest until they're in the situation, right?
Right.
Why do you care about this population? What does it matter? I said, I don't know. I don't know, but I have to do this.
Wait, so
And
you did this before you had gave birth
my
to your
son,
son.
yeah, before
Wow.
yeah, I had nobody around me that was disabled, but I was compelled to do this. It was like
Mm.
a requirement in my spiritual development. It was not an
Mm.
option.
Mm.
And usually people fall into programs because they have a connection or affiliation. I had nothing.
Right, but there was some intuitive sense that like, wow, I'm gonna have to figure this
I'm
out.
going to figure this out. And by the time my son was born, I was already an expert in the area. I knew exactly what he needed. And
Wow.
so he was autistic. And I was able to get, once he was diagnosed, I was able to get him specific therapy, which was not approved at the time by insurance, but I got them approved. And they brought in $100,000 worth of services
Mm.
and literally went from nonverbal to verbal in a year.
Wow. 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 So you were preparing for a reason.
I was preparing for a reason. And I say that because so many times we try to justify and rationalize why decisions have to happen, and we don't use our intuition.
Hmm.
And I'm the opposite.
Mm.
I
Well,
always flow.
and both businesses are like the first one. What you did with the first business that you had is that you basically thought you're not going to tell me no, and two, you just like used your creativity and coming up with alternative ways of getting the
Yes.
vision that you had
Yes.
um, in place. And the second one, which I think is often like you can't get funding, but it's to be creative about like, okay, but what can you do with the money that you do have, with the
Correct.
vision that you do have? And then the second one was really just. I mean, it really is kind of it's kind of amazing. But what's interesting is, I bet if you went to a bank with that idea,
Yeah.
they would. I mean, what did you go to a bank with that idea, and what was the
No,
response?
because many of my colleagues at the time could not understand it. They didn't see an understanding on why I would serve this population. They didn't feel this population could be successful in self-employment. They were used to the system saying, well, if someone has a disability, they just need a menial job.
Mm.
And I said, no. So I came right out of the gate in 2001 giving high quality consulting to often individuals not only that had disability, but they were on, public assistance at some sort, and changed the game. Now I'm an expert in this area, and I have served on self-employment committees for that. I've served representing the governor. I help to shape policies, and in fact, with one organization, I consult on everyone there is visually impaired. They're all blind. And I developed their whole self-employment training program to help them have an opportunity for business. So it's life changing for people.
Yeah, so it's taking people who generally don't have people dismiss.
Of
Whether it
course.
was yourself when you were bankrupt
Yes.
or people who have various disabilities that need help and saying, no, that don't write them off. Here's some possibilities that you just can't even see. Isn't that interesting? Your whole life has an arc, this arc.
It's actually in alignment with my life and my generation. I always say that everybody wants to point the fingers to the underserved or not represent them until they become that.
Mm,
My family was a part of my family was perished in the Holocaust, right? And I always talk about if I had been there, I would have been also perished
mm-hmm.
because, following the pattern. And now, we're in a different position. We have Israel and I don't usually talk about things like this, but I literally every part of who I am has come from struggle.
Mm,
And also I'm a huge hero in representing people who don't necessarily have a voice and can't be
mm-hmm.
heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I will fight for them, whether it's a veteran who can't get through the system, or it's someone with disabilities, or a woman who's struggling. I mean, I will fight for them and do whatever it takes because part of the issue with funding is a system issue.
Right. And what are the systematic issues that are biased against the various populations you just mentioned?
Well, let's talk about the veterans. So let's
Mm-hmm.
be specific. So I'm a consultant for the Veterans Administration, and I want to say full on, I respect them.
Mm-hmm.
I respect their position. However, in the self-employment realm, they do a injustice.
Mm,
The reason for that is simple. In order to qualify for self-employment for funding, the big money, when I think big money, generally $25,000 in grants or higher,
mm-hmm.
you have to be classified as what we call a category 1,
Mm-hmm.
which means, in layman's term, you have to be considered most severe. You
Oh,
have to go exactly. You have to go through all the process and all the evaluations and all the systems and have to be classified that you are so severe that nothing is left for you but getting self-employment. Now,
mm.
how ridiculous is that?
And self-employment is to be a business owner or
To be
you're
a business owner,
okay.
right? They have to think about it the other way because what if we gave them a chance? So that's one issue from a systematic. If we go to the other issue when we talk about Social Security, believe it or not, a majority of people who may have challenges require Social Security for health reasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you may have someone who has a physical impairment and they're on Social Security for health reasons. However, if they decide to start self-employment and make a significant income and pay taxes, Social Security will penalize them.
Oh,
Okay?
gosh, yeah. So the system is kind of
So
not,
the
yeah,
system
in an
needs
alignment. It doesn't make logical sense, actually.
correct.
Mm,
So
okay.
I weave in and I live and breathe in the corporate sector, in the nonprofit sector, and in the government sector because they all play a hand in really changing the game so more people have access.
Mm, mm.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the small business, self-employment ideas that are people like? What are some ideas that people have? Give us a sense of the population, the kinds of things that they're trying to do.
It is all over the map. So let's talk about my inventors. I love my
Right.
inventors. However, if I'm in a room speaking to scientists, heaven forbid I say the word inventor. They'll all walk out the room because they're not inventors in their mind. They're
Mm,
scientists.
mm, okay.
The reality is that in the space of innovation, it's these people who are developing new concepts, whether it's improving a service
Mm-hmm.
or developing new areas of thought or solutions like healthcare or biotech
Mm.
or aviation.
Right.
So you've got those people, and they're constantly looking at new solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the everyday people who are trying to improve everyday problems, houseware, hardware, um, toyware. People solve problems when it annoys them.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily talk and coach the people in Intel. We coach the everyday mom who says, you know what? there's got to be a better way of cleaning this pan.
Right.
And then we also work with businesses who already are in the field. They may not have something unique, but they're trying to grow. And so they're, home services. I am privileged to be part of the largest coaching program for home services. We deal with window cleaners and plumbers and pest control companies. They also need access.
Right.
And if someone says, oh, that's not a big deal, well, how about you tell that when you have your entire house infested with termites?
Right.
All of a sudden, you're like, where is that pest control company? Sorry, they went out of business because they weren't financed. And then we have all the tech, fintech, ed tech, ag tech, anything technology driven is hot right now because everyone wants to be on the internet and doing something cool. So it runs the gamut.
Okay, got it. And so each of these folks, so it seems like given these three segments, there's kind of different kind of challenges in instructing them where to go. So let's just go one by one. So you talked about the inventors who are coming up with new ideas,
Yeah.
of which, finding a great pot scrubber may not be, it's not like, some new high tech machine, but there's a market out there and people interested in it. It seems like of the Shark Tank, a lot of the things I see in Shark Tank kind of fall into that. So when you get funding for someone like that, what are the general resources that you use and how to approach that kind of funding delivery?
Great question. Great question. And to your point, there was a lot of people who may look down on someone who says, well, they have a solution for just scrubbing. But we're talking about $1 billion industry when you think about the houseware industry. And as long as the customer likes it, it's all that matters to me.
Right.
So if we're looking at innovation, we have to really step back because we have to look at what stage are they coming to meet with me. Often they're at the napkin stage, which means we have to first identify, do we need to do a patent search? Well, there's a cost to that. Do we have to look at potential patent pending? Well, there's a cost to that. Do we have to do a prototype? Well, there's a cost to that. We haven't even talked about going to the market yet.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right? So you can see how all of this can add up. So depending, if they're working on that stage, first we're going to look at patent search. Typically, a patent search could run someone anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Of course it is. I've worked with people who've come to me that they've already spent $2,000 on a patent search. So now we think about funding. When I think about grants is not just I'm giving you money. Grants is anytime you receive a comparable service in the market that you didn't have to pay full value for. So if you come to me and we know that the commercial market rate for a patent search by a credible attorney or patent agent or patent search firm is $2,000, but I get you the exact same equivalent service for $250, the difference is your grant.
So is this a grant from a nonprofit that gives you money? Or
Not necessarily. So the one I'm talking about right now is a program out of DC. It is a small business run by a gentleman who actually used to work for the U.S. Patent Office.
Wow.
And so I just absolutely love him. His name is Ron, and he will take any of the clients we serve. He will actually do a full patent search. He will look at current patents, patents pending, patent expired. He will then send it to a patent attorney for a patentability opinion. And that entire cost to you with a full report is $250.
So can anyone get that, or is it like you have to actually prove a certain need in order to get the $250 versus $2,000?
In this case, anyone can, as long as you have the right navigators. Until we had this conversation, would you have known that?
No, who would even know this guy in DC does all this stuff? Like you just wouldn't know. Okay,
right.
So that's one. It's almost kind of knowing the system and where to go to get the
nailed it.
Okay, and then the prototypes. How do you work with
So
that?
Two things. One is with the U.S. Patent Office. I work with their patent pro bono program. Most people don't know about that.
Right.
But they have an incredible pro bono program, and if we get clients qualified, the entire cost of filing that patent and prosecuting that patent, which could be upwards of $10,000, is gifted to them.
Wow. So, but again, do they have to prove that they have a
Well,
need?
again, this is why I focus on target funding, because every program we identify will have variables.
Ah, okay.
Of course.
Right.
Some variables are, this is only for women. Some variables are, you have to be in LA.
Right.
Some variables are, some variables are, you have to have a specific income. That's the game changer.
Right. So you actually know all the variables. So you can say,
You nailed it.
CJ, you're Asian person, inventor. Here you go, woman.
Exactly.
Like you could
There you
actually,
go.
I see. So that's
Right.
your unique your
Right.
consulting proposition for people who need, for inventors who come to you
For
to say, please,
anyone.
Kedma, please help me figure out what to do. And just by consulting with you, they can actually then go save a whole bunch of money. They may pay you for consulting, but then they basically save a whole bunch of money through applying through these grants and such.
Even better, they don't even have to talk to me. They could read my book and follow my formula because I spent 18 years laying it out. But here's what happens. They read my book and they're like, oh, Kedma, can you help me?
Yeah, I get it.
So you said prototype. I love to consider prototypes. So when we think about prototype, again, we scale back. Everybody wants this fancy schmancy product that goes out. No, I want it to work. It doesn't have to be beautiful because we may end up licensing. We may not go for manufacturing. So why would you spend $100,000 on 30 prototypes and then find out, well, wait a minute, the manufacturer is going to retool it anyway?
Right.
Right? So usually I will go to universities. I love universities. I work very closely with them. And they have a capstone program. And often the capstone programs want to work with small businesses that have great ideas. And they will usually start the feasibility around proof of concept.
Perfect.
So that's, yeah. So I have so many things in my head. We could spend hours just going through each
But it's like they do proof of concept so that they actually know that this is it's in tech they call it product management, or like making sure that there's a viable product, that there's a market that exists. So you have a whole bunch of university students do that work for you beforehand so you can figure this stuff out. Okay. I have a whole bunch of clients to refer to you now. A whole bunch of inventors. Okay, so that's basically patent, prototype, and then like figuring out, now that you have this great idea, where are all the different places? License, and what are some of the other options? Licensing?
So primarily it's licensing, manufacturing, crowdfunding, or accelerator program. And again, it all depends. I have one of my clients who is a woman-owned business. She developed a very unique product, but it's only for women. It's for women during their time of the month. It's a very specific product. And she had a really hard time, with investors wanting to back it up because it's not sexy, right? But she was designing it for third world countries and women who didn't have access. So she came to me and she was struggling. She tried to do crowdfunding on her own. Again, she failed. However, here's what I did. Strategically, I looked at the product and I said, okay, what's the best way to play this funding game? And I tied her in with a women accelerator program, only open to women, and they're all women, and they're women investors. Within 6 weeks, she raised $70,000.
And so women accelerator programs are specific demographics that are targeted for funding. So it's I see, got it.
Now you mentioned LGBTQ. I am right now in the process of applying to become an investor for Pipeline Angels. I don't know if you're familiar.
Not familiar.
Well, let me share with the world. Pipeline Angels is an incredible women's organization where women invest in women. However, the focus is we want to really make a commitment to focusing in the LGBTQ community.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So when I was interviewed, they asked me what was my relationship in the community, what was my understanding. I mean, they went through a rigorous process. And then they spend their time going from state to state to interview women businesses and fund them. And so that's an example of a targeted investor program.
Right. So it's almost like you're like the go-to person that has all the you're like the Surrey for
Yes,
like investment funding.
I'm the matchmaker.
Exactly. Okay, God. So I can see how all the same kind of stuff would apply to fintech and tech-driven kinds of product. Is that right?
Correct.
What are the nuances that are a little bit different for those guys?
Okay. Let's talk SBIR, STTR. Are you familiar with that?
No,
Okay. So SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research. The equivalent of that is STTR, which is the Technology Transfer Research Program for universities. It's the largest seed fund in the country that people don't know about. I managed that for the entire program in Oregon. I actually brought it into Oregon when Oregon wasn't doing as much. So if I was working with someone let's say I was working with a client who came to me and said, I want to develop an app around social engagement. Not really exciting.
right.
Tell me. Well, it's social engagement where the actual app will allow people to better communicate their thoughts and feelings. Okay, tell me more. Well, it's targeted to people on the autism spectrum.
Okay. Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. That would be an SBIR.
Yes.
SBIR is an incredible program where the government sets aside $2.2 billion
Wow.
every year to solve big problems. And they do it in the form of 11 federal agencies. So the way it works is the first phase is phase one, where the government will give upwards of $100,000 just to test if your idea is feasible.
Wow.
If Okay, 100 non-dilutive funds, meaning you don't have to return the money back.
Wow.
Phase two, if it is feasible and you receive a phase two, they're going to give you upwards of $1 million to
Wow.
test and prove it out. And guess what? They don't take a position on your intellectual property.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So now we're going to go back to the example. We have someone who's developed a really cool application to support communication integration for social engagement for people on the autism spectrum. That would be something I would consider for a National Institute of Health grant because autism is considered an epidemic now. In fact, in New Jersey, I just heard it's 1 in 46 kids.
Right. Right.
So I would veer them and say, let's look at the government funds and see what problems we can solve for the government. And then we're going to look at building a team. Because when we're going after those grants, we have to build the right team in order to go after those grants.
Right. Yeah. You have to prove that you actually have a great software developer, a tester, all those kinds of things.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So that's the unique part of.
Right. So, right. Every part is so unique because I can go to any industry and I can show you specific funds that are tied just to that industry.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's almost like if I had come in that case, it was like autism. So you're like, aha, go to the National Health Institute. If it was something else, you may be like, go to the FDA or wherever it may be. Okay.
Correct.
I get it. So those are the unique aspects for the tech piece is that they're different resource because they need like phase one, phase two for feasibility studies, for prototyping and testing. And then they need to actually prove that they have a tech team that can deliver the results of stuff.
You nailed it.
Okay. And then the third is business and fields that are growing and like home services, pest control, home cleaning. What are some of the resources out there for that kind of audience?
So that, again, it depends. So when I talk with clients, I say, what do you need the money for? So sometimes a client says, I'm looking at hiring people. I can't afford it. Well, most people don't know this. So I'm so excited. I wish I could jump up and down. I can't. But if I was on stage, I would be jumping up and down because what I'm about to tell you is most people don't realize this. I call it hidden money, and I call it hidden money because the organizations don't disclose and share and communicate this because their money is very limited. But there are job training grants where many organizations will literally pay you to hire individuals upwards of 6 months of payment per hour full time, which really translates to often about a $10,000 grant. So we would go after job training grants to essentially hire people.
So you would basically, so the training grant would be taking people who've just been like, I used to be an assembly worker at Boeing. Now I'm trying to learn about pest control. And then and they'd say, but I just need a pest control place to hire me. So you would then take that person who has like some training in pest control, and then they would give me money to hire that person.
Well, it depends, right? So pest control could be example, or it could be a tech company, or it could be someone trying to hire a blogger. Um, what is most important is that in your local area, many organizations, counties, and at the state level want to make sure they ensure job creation. And so they align these training grants to incentivize companies to hire people. However, the companies never know about the grants. They hire the people anyway, and then they lose out on the funds.
I see. Wow, interesting. So you just have to know the types of organizations in your
Correct.
location, the type of training, and whether they fit the kind of thing. So I may need to hire an IT person, and there's a
Correct.
person who's been trained for IT. I just have to find out, I have to do the matchmaking to
You've
figure
got to
out
do the
people.
matchmaking. Now,
Okay.
one more thing you said. So let's talk about capital investment. In 2008, I purchased my own office through a grant, through a subsidy, but it had specific variables. You had to be based in Multnomah County, which is where I'm at, 3 years in business. You had to show community service or impact. You had to be a woman or a minority. In order to get into the program, I did not require a credit check, and I did not require collateral.
Wow.
Okay, I purchased my office for $600,000. All I had to do was 6% down, and you're going to love this. For the last decade, my interest has been fixed at 0.04%.
So you're paying like what, $200 per month
Correct.
for your office?
It's a beautiful office.
Wow. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, so those are the kinds of resources because when people scale, they need to actually have a
Yes.
bigger physical location. They need to
Correct.
hire people.
Correct.
And what's interesting because when I've talked to people who are small businesses going through there, this is kind of like go big or go home. Is this kind of you hit a point where your business is at an inflection point
Yeah.
where you either have to spend the money and put yourself in incredible risk because you're buying the piece of equipment or rental office or people
Mhm.
and you're not sure if the business is going to scale for that
Yes.
kind of business. So what would you say to those people? So it sounds like one, there's ways to minimize the financial risks that you put in through doing these job training grants, through looking
Yes.
at the specific. What was the thing that you got for your office?
It
What was
was
called?
it was yeah, it was a special program that included new market tax credits with the
Okay.
idea of providing small businesses with the opportunity of commercial ownership, and it was amazing.
Wow. So you just have to know, be in the know for what these things. But what would you say to those people? Because every small business either hits a point where, in order to go to the next level, in order to be the beautician, I need to buy this like a very expensive piece of equipment.
Yep.
Hire another person because I see my business growing, but do I just scale back and charge higher rates, or do I hire another person? Like, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, because I don't buy into the philosophy of go big, go home.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times and however you want to do it, I support that. But there's an analogy that a lot of my colleagues do, and for them it works. They say, I jumped off the cliff and I'm building the plane on the way down.
Yes.
But I like to say I'm not on that cliff. I'm actually in a hot air balloon,
Right.
which allows me to have a slower opportunity, to gauge. And so I say that because if I am working with that beautician who wants to expand, I'm going to look at, first of all, I'm going to require them to put down all the things they need to expand. Then I'm going to tell them that I want it in order of priority. that they have to communicate to me what they absolutely need first.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have to communicate when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we have to decide, do they have to buy it? Can they lease it? Can they move it into a certain place? And then we have to see, do they have the budget for it?
Mm-hmm.
I am a very conservative consultant,
Mm-hmm.
and because I study why businesses fail for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the reasons businesses fail is they're either undercapitalized,
Mm-hmm.
or they go too fast and they burn out. They
Mm.
can't meet that pace. They're racing, and they're just going to explode.
Right.
So I'm going to work with them, and then I'm going to say, we need to think out of the box. So what organizations can we tap into that may have funding we don't know about?
Mm.
And so then we go down and we literally build a funding calendar. If you study most of the books out there, their idea of funding is save money.
Mm.
That's not in my book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't tell you to save money, but I do tell you to repurpose how you think about money,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not we can find another way to leverage what you need without spending the money.
Okay, so let me go back for people who are not familiar with these terms. So either you said they're undercapitalized, meaning like they don't have the proper equipment, people, whatever. Is that what you
Yes.
mean? Like what we were talking about before. So they want to grow, but they can't unless they build, buy or hire whomever. That's undercapitalized. And burnout, you're saying, is that they have this idea of go big or go home, and they're spending more money than they actually have
Exactly.
coming in the door. So those are the two things that you see as causing business failure. Okay,
Absolutely.
right. And so part of what you want to do is like, don't let, you're more conservative. Don't. And I actually have I've heard of many instances, two dear friends who had, savings, 401k, saving for retirement that they kept on like taking a little bit of
Mm,
money out of, and to the point that they've either depleted those resources and are now moving into situations to do like videos and to do
yep.
marketing machines, because a lot of this online stuff requires you to do. I
Yep.
have to take an online, you have to do it all by yourself, and most people can't afford to be an expert in some, some program that they're doing on psychology
Understood.
and do social media and do, whatever else you need, marketing and putting together a
Right.
website. So they hire someone to do this. They charge a ton of money to do this, like probably 5 or 10 grand by the time you're done with everything.
So let's talk about that, because I am 100% clear on outsourcing,
Hmm.
but you've got to work with the currency that makes sense. I believe in the global currency. So one of my favorite places where I suggest people outsource is Upwork.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're familiar with Upwork.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you get someone from a different country that charges, instead of $15 an hour, $3 an hour to do something.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, you know, on Upwork, it's not that actually the vendors I work with on Upwork, we have long-term relationships, and the price point we decide, they are so happy.
Right. Both of you are happy.
Both of us are happy. So I just did a speaker reel, which I'll send to you.
Hmm.
The response I'm getting unanimously, people love it. The cost of a speaker reel, if I did a scissor reel here in the US, it would have probably cost
Five
me
grand. Yeah.
easily
Yeah.
3 to 5 thousand easily.
Yeah.
Okay, the quality that was put into that was top notch. I just got a speaking gig out of it. Total cost for me was $250.
Wow. Okay. I'll have to I'll have to connect with you after the show to get your resources. Right. So that's like, so it's being more clever about, some people, and part of it is because I actually gave some of these folks, I'm like, here's my website person. It costs
Right.
substantially lower. You have to be okay with a template. You have to, and like, so you can't have all these customized what's running around. You have to be okay with the template. You have to be okay that they're in a different time zone. They may not speak English even. You may have to
Yeah.
actually type in Skype, and they're going to have to do a translate, but you're going to be paying a lot less for some of these things.
And one point I want to make sure the audience knows is I believe, having worked with 10,000 entrepreneurs, which is a large number, I believe fundamentally we spend too much on marketing to make, the right website, the right, blog, and too little on our own personal brand. I built my LinkedIn from 4,000 to 32,000 on my own with pretty subpar videos. No lighting,
Right.
no special equipment. People would say, how long did it take you? 3 minutes, but it was 3 minutes. And because I worked on me.
Like the content itself was great. Like
The
the lighting may
content,
have been awful, whatever, but the content
yes.
was good.
So work on you, work on your content, because you could have the most beautiful website and still nobody wants to work with you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is unfortunately what has happened to some of my friends. Like they've built out these beautiful things,
Oh,
right? And they
oh
can't
no.
do anything with it, and they've spent their retirement savings. So, I mean, it's just so this whole go big or go home, your perspective is like these are the reasons. Like, what's your kind of, because people say that to me all the time. Like, I have to go big or go home on
Oh
my.
no. Have them talk to me. Let me give you an example of go big, go home.
Okay.
Before I bought my office, I walked into a beautiful office. I mean, stunning. I want you to imagine walking in, plush couches. At the time, it was about 15 years ago. TVs everywhere, carpet galore. And I thought, oh my goodness, this place is gorgeous. What did it cost you to furnish this? And proudly, the owner said, well, it cost us about $50,000. I said, goodness, how did you afford that? And he said, I put it on my credit cards.
Oh gosh.
He was out of business in 6 months, and I took over his office.
Oh wow. Wow. Yikes.
So
That's
that's it. Go big, go home.
right. He did go big and he went home.
Right. And I'm still here.
Right. With this plush couch.
And and I think why we get in trouble is we have our pride and ego that gets in the way of what we need to do. When I had my very first office, it was a 150 square foot office, and I said to the landlord, I don't know if I can afford this. It was 150 a month. So I called my friend Jonathan. I said, Jonathan, would you share my office? So I had 75 square feet. Think about that. 75 square feet. And he had 75, and my landlord walked in one day and goes, now, Kedma, if you can't afford 75 square feet, I think you do need to go home. I said, no, I can afford this.
So it's really being financially prudent. I mean, how would some people so you're the person that you spoke to or went to
Yeah.
their office, they funded it via their credit card, or
Yes.
you go to a bank, and so what's your attitude and belief about like when do you go to a bank? When do you go to use your credit card? Are there any times when it's appropriate to do so?
Yes. When you have asset you're buying that you can hold and build equity, definitely go to a bank or go to a lender or go to a 504 SBA loan.
Okay.
I am a huge advocate for lines of credit versus loan, because if you're dealing with accounts receivable, you definitely want to have the line of credit. If someone, companies sometimes don't pay till 90 days, you don't want to be stressed out, so get a line of credit. I am a proponent for a loan, but you better have, for me, if I was coaching you, you better have that reflected in the budget, how that purchase is going to make you money.
Okay, got it. So like if I'm buying,
Money.
yeah, so for example, I buy some weird esthetician whatever thing, and so that cost me 10 grand to get that piece of
Mhm.
equipment to do facials,
Yep.
and then you're saying as long as it's collateral, meaning I can actually take that item and resell it for a good portion of what I bought the item for $10,000, I can get $10,000 or thereabouts for that
Or
item.
or I would ask you okay, so now you have this item for 10,000. What's the price point that you're going to charge customers for that service? And you
Right,
say $100. Okay, well now we clearly know how many customers you need to have in
right,
order to break even.
right.
Now we're going to look at your weekly plan to see how you're going to drum up those customers to use the services to pay for
Right.
that item.
And they'll be like, that's a lot of customers. That's like 1,000, what is it, a
Yeah,
thousand customers,
that's
right?
a
So,
lot of
so
customers.
how am I going to generate 1,000 customers to buy that $10,000 piece of equipment? And you may say, maybe you should lease this
Except
equipment.
maybe you should lease it, or maybe you should drum up the business before you go out and buy the product.
Right,
I could sell ice to Eskimos, but at some point someone's like, okay, I'm ready now. Can I see the ice?
right.
So you don't have to have things in hand to sell. You just have to have enough to say, okay, now I have the customers
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and now I can go do it. And that's
Right,
just basic market research.
right, right. This is fabulous. I think we've covered almost, like, I'm not sure we've covered every single scenario, I think. And it sounds like it's all in here.
And so, well, I have thousands of scenarios, but what I want everyone to know is my heart is in this. It kills me when I hear the stories that you say, and I've seen it over and over again.
Mm-hmm,
Someone investing and then losing their 401k.
mm-hmm.
Someone having to go back and get minimum wage job when they were, after retirement because they made bad decisions. And not every coach is an exceptional coach. You know, there is always a cost to listening to someone. So I'm going to tell someone right now, you don't have to listen to me. Just look at my results. If you like my results, or you like the life I live, or you like what I'm saying, then follow what I'm saying. Then follow my recipe. And I think we do a disservice sometimes where we coach people and the things we say send them in the wrong direction, and then they make poor decisions.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like one last question. I think you just answered this, but what do you think most people get wrong when looking to grow their business?
Ooh, they get a lot of things wrong, but primarily they need to have the right team players. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stress that enough. If you want to do business alone, find an island, bring your laptop and hang out there, but the rest of us have to go through people. You can find who the influencers are. And it's not just about them making money. Those influencers are on nonprofit boards. I sit on the largest nonprofit board for inventors in the country.
Mm.
Okay, so I am on a board for people with disabilities. So when I share, I'm not just sharing, I'm in the space. I'm in the space for home services. So I'm changing the system. So number one, find your superheroes.
You mean
And
your business advisors or the employees that you hire or both?
first, your business advisors. You've got to find your superheroes. They're going to open doors you can't open.
I see. Got it.
They're
Okay.
going to open doors you can't open. Second, get out of your own way. Your mind is actually not telling you the truth. It's lying to you. So get out of your own way and walk in with a fresh understanding that you don't know what you don't know. So stop thinking you know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I always walk in and say, hey, you know what? I don't know anything. Tell me everything I need to know, because
Mm.
I don't have pride in it.
Right, because I see that a lot where a lot of businesses is like, well, I'll give them advice and they're like, well, I know blah blah blah. I know about marketing because
Ugh.
I do. I'm like, okay, I did marketing for like 15 years, but somehow you know more than what I'm trying.
Exactly.
Like you please like get out of your own way because
Get
I'm
out of
trying to
your own.
give you free advice and you're kind of like trying to prove how you know everything. So why are you even talking to me if you know everything?
Right. And to your point, it's because you give free advice. They don't
Right.
value the
Yeah.
power you bring.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so one, get out of your own way. What was the first one? I'm still
Find
laughing.
find your heroes. Find
Find
your
your
super.
heroes, right?
Get
Okay,
out
got it.
of your own way. And you don't have to go big, go home. How about getting a smaller house? Get a tiny house instead of a huge, humongous house. The point is that there is a rhythm to business success. Now, you can argue with me and say, well, so and so went from 0 to 5 million in a year. That's an outlier.
Right.
That's not the everyday entrepreneur who's struggling.
Yeah.
The everyday entrepreneur is systematic. They play the game like a chess game.
Okay, so I have another question that is related to that because so many people do this. I am signing up for the program of blah 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 who apparently made 5 million in whatever 5 days, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And how much does a program cost? $10,000. I'm like, well, maybe that's how they made $5 million in 5 days.
exactly.
But in hiring consultants, I mean, how? And you had said yourself, like, do the research, make
Just
sure.
the research.
But not a lot of this stuff is out there, and people hear, that there's this kind of snake oil thing going around.
Yes.
What kinds of things would you suggest people look at for hiring the right consultant?
First of all, I would definitely do some reviews online. Like on my LinkedIn, I have over 100 reviews, and I will not accept a review unless someone has actually worked with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really clear about that. Second, you can go to the major influencers and say, who do you work with? They're going
Mm-hmm.
to tell you.
Right.
So and then I do love organizations that are specific. So you may tie in with a accelerator program or incubator program because they'll wrap around investors.
Mm.
And then I would check national nonprofit organizations and see
Mm.
who's on their board of directors. So you're right. Unfortunately, we have to tighten the industry
Yeah.
because you know where I'm going with this. We have to tighten the industry, and it's very frustrating when I'm working with a client behind the eight ball and now trying to save them. And sometimes I have to say, this business needs a priest, basically. You're not going to make it.
Oh, God,
Or a
it's a
rabbi,
priest or
depending on,
rabbi.
you know,
Yeah.
but, and it's not their fault.
Yeah, they just didn't know. I mean,
They
and
didn't.
there's all these platitudes running around, and you see one person doing it, so you think that you can do it, but the circumstances aren't
Right.
exactly the same.
One thing I want the audience to really think about, the majority of people who are making these comments like I'm going to spend 5,000 or 10,000, they want the microwave life. The microwave life is a life where they show up in my office and they want me to put them in the microwave for 2 minutes and it comes out, now they have the perfect life.
Okay.
Okay, I am a conventional oven.
Right.
I have ingredients, I take my time, I let it simmer, I add some seasonings. I don't do the microwave life because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, the microwave life generally, when I see these programs that people sign up to, they're very generic. They try to take the lowest common denominator, like they figure out the program that could work for the most people, which I
Yes.
applaud. But then as a result, it doesn't really work for you. So, you spend $500, $1,000 on a program to write a business plan. And
Yes.
then you come out with a business plan, you're following all the steps, but they're missing fundamentals. Like this person that I was coaching, I'm
Mhm.
like, show me your business plan. I'm like, wait, what? Like, because I've written business plans. And I thought, what? How? She's like, no, I was following all the steps, but because she's following an online program and there's no interaction, she doesn't know that what
Correct.
she's creating isn't really fulfilling the actual intent of a business plan, even though she's filling out all the lines. And
Correct.
so I think that's the problem with some of those programs. They're not customized for a particular person, and they may not even be hitting the mark of what they're trying to do. And no one's going to tell you they're not hitting the mark because it's $5,000 business program and it's
Yes.
generic. So that's kind
And
of
it's not
downside.
targeted.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a hard thing. Anyways, this has been fantastic. We have been
Oh, thank
talking to Kedma
you.
Target Funding, a proven
Yes.
system to get the money and resources you need to start or grow your business. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you. If I can do anything, let me know.
Well, how do folks actually reach you if they want to find out more
Um,
about your work?
Easy. They can just go to our website, targetfunding.com, or they can go right to my name, Kedma Ough,
Okay.
Ough.com. They can
Okay.
find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
or they can just Google Kedma. I always say if you find another Kedma, run. We should only have one of me on earth. Um, or they can find me with speaking engagements. I'm going to be speaking at the International Houseware Show in March. It looks like I have another speaking gig in September. So I love to speak. And if there's someone here who has something coming up for speaking, I'm always open to sharing because I want to really spread the message that we have an obligation, especially for the industry experts, to really protect the integrity of the work we're supporting and what we're coaching. And we can only do that in unified form.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you so much. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.